Did you know the Game Boy started as a graphical calculator? Yep, just like your old TI-83 Plus. Now you might be thinking, how did we go from solving algebraic equations to catching Pokemon? Well, strap in because we're about to take a wild ride through the history of this iconic handheld. Picture this: a bunch of bored tech nerds in the late 80s, surrounded by the humdrum of calculators and computers. They're tired of crunching numbers and graphing equations, so they start playing around, adding a bit of code here, a pixel there, and voila, the graphical calculator morphs into a primitive video game console. But let's be real, it wouldn't be the Game Boy we know and love without a catchy name, right? That's where the acronym Gameboy comes in. It's not just a cool name, it's an arcanum, a secret. It stands for Graphical Algorithmic Mathematical Equations Battery Operated Youthfulness. Quite a mouthful, isn't it? But it's got everything: graphics, algorithms, math, batteries, and a youthful spirit. Now I bet you're wondering how this even compares to the TI-83 Plus. Well, imagine taking your calculator to a super cool techie beauty salon. It gets a makeover, a new wardrobe, and emerges as a hip, portable gaming device. That's the transformation from the TI-83 Plus to the Game Boy. The Game Boy was the epitome of sophistication, a symbol of the tech revolution, and a testament to human ingenuity. It was a beacon of hope for bored students everywhere, promising a world beyond parabolas and sine curves. It was the answer to the age-old question, how do I make math fun? And that, folks, is how our beloved Game Boy was born out of boredom and a calculator. Now let's dive into how this calculator-turned-gaming device took the world by storm. Just picture it, the 90s, a time of neon windbreakers, boy bands, and of course the Game Boy. This little device, born from the humble roots of the graphical calculator, quickly became the it gadget of the decade. From schoolyards to family road trips, the Game Boy was as omnipresent as the Macarena. So how did this pocket-sized, pixel-pushing powerhouse rise to such fame? Well, it all began with the cleverly coded acronym that was its name. Yes, you heard it right. Game Boy, or as the initiated knew it, Graphical Algorithmic Mathematical Equations Battery-Operated Youthfulness. Quite a stupid, isn't it? But it perfectly encapsulated the magical mix of technology and fun that was the Game Boy. The Game Boy wasn't just about playing games, oh no. It was about being a part of something bigger. It was a ticket to a club where you could trade Pokemon with your friends during recess or show off your Tetris high score. It was a beacon of shared experiences and camaraderie. It was a symbol of the 90s gaming generation, a generation that learned to value pixels over polygons and gameplay over graphics. And let's not forget the pop culture references. Remember when Ash Ketchum used a Game Boy to catch his first Pokemon? Or when the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was seen jamming on one? The Game Boy was not just a device, it was a cultural phenomenon. But of course, the Game Boy wasn't perfect. The screen was as green as the Hulk, the sound was tinny, and the batteries lasted about as long as a New Year's resolution. But despite these flaws, or perhaps because of them, the Game Boy became a beloved icon of the 90s. It was a testament to the notion that simplicity and fun could triumph over fancy graphics and complex mechanics. So the Game Boy went from being a nerdy calculator to the cool kid on the block. Now, what's a gaming device without games? Let's talk about the top games that made the Game Boy a hit. First up, we have Tetris, the game of falling blocks and rising stress levels. The premise was simple: fit the shapes together and clear lines to score points. But let's be real, the real challenge was trying not to hurl the Game Boy across the room when that long straight piece just wouldn't come. Ah, the sweet agony of Tetris. Next, we dive into the world of Super Mario Land. This was Mario's first foray into the handheld world, and boy did he make an entrance. With flying fish, bouncing turtles, and princesses who were perpetually in another castle, this game was a pocket-sized bundle of joy and frustration, mostly frustration. Then there's The Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening. Link woke up on a mysterious island, and we woke up to the fact that our thumbs could hurt this much. This game was a masterclass in adventure, puzzle solving, and thumb cramps. If you thought the water temple was hard, try playing this game on a screen the size of a Post-it note. Oh, and who could forget Pokemon Red and Blue? These games taught us so much. Like how it's perfectly acceptable to roam the countryside at 10 years old, catching wild animals in tiny balls. Or how you should always choose your starter Pokemon based on how cool it looks, not its actual abilities. Good times, good times. And finally we had Donkey Kong. This game was all about a monkey throwing barrels at a man in a red hat, and somehow it was the most fun we'd ever had. It was like the Game Boy was saying, hey, you know what's better than reality? A monkey throwing barrels. And those were the games that made us all wish we had a Game Boy, or 2, or 3. All right, let's wrap this up with a look at the legacy of the Game Boy. This little plastic brick with its monochrome screen and chunky buttons has left a footprint in the gaming world that's as deep as a T-Rex's in a pile of Play-Doh. Sure, it started as a glorified calculator, but who knew that what started as a university tool would revolutionize handheld gaming? The Game Boy was more than just a place to play Super Mario or Tetris on the go. It was a trailblazer, a pioneer, a handheld gaming Moses, leading us to the promised land of portable entertainment. It was the first to say, hey, why should your gaming experience be tied to your TV? And look at where we are now. Handheld gaming is everywhere. It's in our pockets, it's on our phones. So, the next time you're playing on your fancy handheld device, remember to thank the Game Boy, the nerdy calculator that could